Good morning, everybody. Hope you're having a great Sunday. This is the newest article from labornotinvain.com. If you're not already subscribed to the emails, be sure to do that because you'll get them all instantly to your inbox and can read the article right there. And if you're not subscribed to YouTube, feel free to do that as well. Okay, so the day, the hour, and the unexpected hanging is the title of this article. Most Bible students in the Church of Christ believe that Matthew 24 is a divided discourse covering two subjects, the fall of Jerusalem and the end of time. They believe that the fall of Jerusalem is under consideration in Matthew 24, verses 1 through 34, while Jesus discusses the end of time in the remainder of the chapter and the chapter to follow. One major argument used to defend this position is that while Jesus' coming at the fall of Jerusalem had signs, his coming at the end of time will not. And this is all based upon verse 36. But of that day and hour knows no one, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father alone. Matthew 24:36. Since they could not know the day or the hour, the argument goes, and the signs would reveal the day or hour, then no signs given by Jesus apply to his final coming. After all, they say, Jesus knew when the fall of Jerusalem would be. In the Bible, I used up to about 2015, I had markings in the margins to show this divide. One arrow went from verse 34 and pointed up, and it was labeled AD 70, while the other was pointed down and to the rest of the passage with the label the end of time. So to deal with this argument, we got to do two different things, or rather several things. One, we need to answer the question, can the expression, but of that day and hour knows no one, apply to an event when one knows the general time frame of its fulfillment? Number two, did the disciples know the day or the hour of the fall of Jerusalem? And number three, is Matthew 24 divided? First, talk about this generation. So, can the expression, but of that day and hour no one knows, apply to an event when one knows the general time frame of its fulfillment? In the Olivet Discourse, Matthew 24 and 25, Jesus says that the events would take place within that generation in Matthew 24:34. So since they knew it would be in that generation, could it be that they were also unaware of the time? I think so. What's interesting is that this question is actually an example of what's called the unexpected hanging paradox. And here is the example given in the Wikipedia article talking about this paradox. And hang on because it's kind of fun. So a judge tells a condemned prisoner that he will be hanged at noon on one weekday in the following week, but that the execution will be a surprise to the prisoner. He will not know the day of the hanging until the executioner knocks on his cell door at noon that day. Having reflected on his sentence, the prisoner draws the conclusion that he will escape from the hanging. His reasoning is in several parts. He begins by concluding that the surprise hanging can't be on Friday, as if he hasn't been hanged by Thursday. There's only one day left, and so it won't be a surprise if he's hanged on Friday. Since the judge's sentence stipulated that the hanging would be a surprise to him, he concludes it cannot occur on Friday. He then reasons that the surprise hanging cannot be on Thursday either, because Friday has already been eliminated, and if he hasn't been hanged by Wednesday noon, the hanging must occur on Thursday, making a Thursday hanging not a surprise either. By similar reasoning, he concludes that the hanging can also not occur on Wednesday, Tuesday, or Monday. Joyfully, he retires to his cell confident that the hanging will not occur at all. The next week, the executioner knocks on the prisoner's door at noon on Wednesday, which, despite all the above, was an utter surprise to him, and everything the judge said came true. Now, we could apply the same logic and the outcome to the fall of Jerusalem. Jesus promising that it would happen within that generation doesn't mean that they knew the day or the hour. Knowing the general time frame of an event doesn't demand that one knows the exact timing of it. For an example, when a mother is pregnant, she knows the due date, but she also knows that the child will come whenever they are ready. My son was born about 2 weeks early. However, this doesn't mean that the disciples didn't know the day or the hour of the fall of Jerusalem. It just shows that one conclusion doesn't imply the other. So did they know exactly when Jerusalem would fall? Let's take a look. In Matthew 24:20, Jesus says, "But pray that your flight will not be in winter or on a Sabbath." So Jesus gave them signs to look for to know that the temple was ready to fall so they could leave Jerusalem. Using an example that we just mentioned, when a mother is expecting a child, she doesn't know when the baby will arrive. But as she nears the time of delivery, she sees signs that alert her to a more specific time of birth. When a new mom doesn't know all the signs to look out for, it's possible for her to go into labor without even knowing. My wife had contractions all weekend in her lower back, but she didn't recognize what they were until the day that Caden was born. The disciples knew the general time of the fall of Jerusalem, this generation, but they didn't know the specific time. Jesus calls this that day and hour in verse 36. But in verse 20, he warns, pray that your flight will not be in winter or on a Sabbath. Apparently, not only did they not know the day or the hour, but they didn't even know the season. This raises another question. If they didn't know the day or hour, how could they ever say that the coming of the Lord was at hand, like James? You too be patient, strengthen your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is near. James 5:8. Excellent question, and I'll answer this question with something I call the crescendo of imminence. The term crescendo is a musical term meaning the loudest point in a gradually increasing sound. A good example of this is that old THX intro played at the beginning of Star Wars, called Deep Note. The wow, like really loud thing, I'm talking about. Anyways, by crescendo of imminence, I mean the tendency of New Testament authors to talk about the coming of the Lord with more and more urgency the closer they get to the fall of Jerusalem. For example, in 1 Thessalonians 4, Paul says, we who are alive and remain until the coming of the Lord will not precede those who have fallen asleep. This statement is fairly general, but it still affirms a basic assumption of the New Testament writers instilled within them by Jesus. Some original disciples would be alive to see the coming of Jesus in his kingdom. Matthew 10:23, Matthew 16:27-28. As the New Testament authors continued to write, the statements of imminence became more intense. Romans 13:11 and 12 says, do this knowing the time that it is already the hour for you to awaken from sleep. For now salvation is nearer to us than when we believed. The night is almost gone, and the day is near. Therefore let us lay aside the deeds of darkness and put on the armor of light. 1 Peter 4:7, he says, the end of all things is near. Therefore be of sound judgment and sober spirit for the purpose of prayer. Peter would later say in verse 17, the appointed time has come for judgment to begin. John says in 1 John 2:18, children, it is the last hour. And Hebrews 10:37 says, in a very little while, he who is coming will come and will not delay. Hopefully, you can catch the sense of urgency in the passages as you read. As a side note, I believe one could use these statements to assist themselves in dating the New Testament books. All right, let's look at one more passage, a passage that probably fits somewhere in the middle of the above texts. James says in James 5:8 and 9, you too be patient, strengthen your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is near. Do not complain, brethren, against one another, so that you yourselves may not be judged. Behold, the judge is standing right at the door. James 5:8 and 9. The reason I chose this passage is its connection with Matthew 24. Matthew 24:32-34 says, now learn the parable from the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and puts forth its leaves, you know that summer is near. So you too, when you see all these things, recognize that he is near, right at the door. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all of these things take place. Now, did they know, by the way, the day or the hour that the fruit would be produced by the fig tree? Not at all. But they knew what signs to look for to know when it was near. So James, he did not know the day or the hour, but he must have seen something that caused him to alert his readers that the judge was, quote, right at the door, as he says in James 5:9 and as Jesus says in Matthew 22:33. Like Jesus taught in the parable of the fig tree quoted above, something was happening in James' day which signaled that the coming of the Lord was near. So the disciples didn't know the exact day or hour. Jesus gave them enough information, however, to know when it was getting close. Like Jesus said, they were to pray that their flight from Jerusalem wouldn't be in the winter or on Sabbath. To be fair, just because the disciples didn't know the day or the hour of Jerusalem's fall doesn't mean that there isn't a division in Matthew 24. So let's dig just a little bit deeper. Is Matthew 24 divided? Now there's a larger question lying right below the surface of this one. Is Matthew 24 talking about two different comings of the Lord? And this question potentially leads to other scary questions like, are there multiple comings of Jesus, or is there a second coming? While we won't answer all these in this article, hopefully we can at least get you thinking about some of these other questions. Now, to answer the question stated in the title of this section, no, Jesus isn't addressing two different subjects, the end of time and the fall of Jerusalem. To show that, though, let's look at Luke's gospel. In chapter 17, Luke records a lot of the same things that Matthew does in his chapter 24. I believe this point is best demonstrated if you really just do this yourself. So pause the recording, go read Matthew 24, followed by Luke 17, 22 to 37, and while you're reading, fill out the chart, which is downloadable in the description below. I have attached an answer key as well if you've already done this and you just kind of want to look at it and see what I have to say. And so I'm going to do a couple of them first before you pause the recording, and that'll show you what it looks like on that'll show you what it kind of looks like, and then you can go ahead and get that done on your own and then return to the recording once you're finished. So in Matthew 24:27, for instance, Jesus says, "For just as the lightning comes from the east and flashes to the west, so will the coming of the Son of Man be." Matthew 24:27, and that's found in the first half of the chapter, half 1 through 34. But then in Luke 17:22 to 37, Jesus says this in verse 24, "Just like lightning, when it flashes out of one part of the sky, shines to the other part of the sky, so will the Son of Man be in his day." So pretty obvious parallel between those two passages. And again, that's found in the first half of Matthew 24. But this passage is found in the second half of Matthew 24. Matthew 24:37 to 39. "For the coming of the Son of Man will be like in the days of Noah. In those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark. And they did not understand until the flood came and took them all away. So will the coming of the Son of Man be." Matthew 24:37 to 39. Then in Luke 17:26 and 27, he says the same thing. I'm not going to read it again. So go download that file, pause the recording, and come back here when you're finished finding all the parallels. All right, now that you're back, or if you just kept listening, which you probably did, let's just keep going. Okay, now that you completed the chart, notice that while Matthew includes some of these references in one so-called half, Luke uses all these expressions interchangeably. There is no division in Matthew 24 because there's no division in Luke 17. The passages in the latter half are just as applicable to the fall of Jerusalem as those in the first quotes unquote half. Now, in this article, or this audio for you, we've established that the disciples did not know the day or the hour of the fall of Jerusalem, even though they knew the general time frame. We've also seen that Matthew 24 is one discussion about the same topic, the fall of Jerusalem. There are lots of other questions that need to be answered now, but that will have to wait for another time. Until then, I encourage you to listen to my interview with Kevin Prendergrass and Lee Grant in the link below, and you can also find the answers to the worksheet below as well. Hope you enjoyed this reading of this article. All the articles, even the ones that are not read, can be found at labornotinvain.com, and I post one every single day at 9 a.m. Eastern. Have a great day. Enjoy your Sunday. Hey, by the way, tune in 15 minutes to listen to our Bible class this morning. We'll be doing an overview of Galatians 5 and 6. All right. God bless.